This is dialogue between the human and ChatGPT on the topic of art in the ASI era. Human: how would look art made from ASI that only ASI would have understand and human not? Can you make an image of it?
ChatGPT: that's a fascinating question. Imagining art created by an artificial superintelligence, ASI, that only ASI could fully comprehend, while being unintelligible to humans, opens up a whole realm of possibilities. Since we're talking about a superintelligence, it might create art based on entirely different rules, structures, or patterns that go beyond human cognitive capacities. It could use hyper-advanced mathematical concepts, multidimensional representations, or even encode ideas in ways that humans would never perceive or interpret correctly. For example, ASI Art could 1. Use higher dimensional geometry. Art might exist in a space of dimensions beyond the 3 we know, so that we could only see shadows or projections of the full object. 2. Hyper-complex patterns. It might involve fractal patterns or mathematical symmetries that humans cannot process in their entirety, with each iteration of the pattern encoding information or meaning that only the ASI can decode. 3. Neural symbolism. Imagine an artwork that combines subtle signals or stimuli that interact with a superintelligent neural network, almost like an internal language, which could create shifts in perception or meaning only understood by an intelligence that can interpret it on a neural level. 4. Temporal art. ASI could create something that exists simultaneously in different times, or could be understood only by processing events over a longer temporal span than humans can experience. While I can't physically generate an image of this art since I'm not a visual model, you can imagine it as something so alien and intricate, it might feel like a 3D hologram made up of incomprehensible symbols, patterns, and colors, designed to interact with the neural or cognitive structures of a superintelligence. If you could, would you be interested in trying to understand what such an artwork might look like, or how you might even approach creating something akin to it? It's such an abstract concept, but fun to think about.
Human: can you make that?
ChatGPT: I wish I could directly generate visual art for you, but I don't have the capability to create images. However, I can describe how such art might look in more detail, if you want to imagine it, or even attempt to create it with a visual tool. Let's break down the ideas so you can picture it in your mind. 1. Higher dimensional geometry. Imagine a floating, shifting structure made of geometric shapes, each one more complex than anything you've ever seen. It's like a cube that seems to fold in on itself in multiple directions, but these folds don't make sense within the limits of 3D space. Perhaps these shapes are constantly morphing into other forms that you can't fully perceive, and they might change depending on where you're standing, as though you're only seeing part of the whole. 2. Hyper-complex patterns. Picture an endless web of fractals, spiraling inward in ways that make your brain ache just trying to process them. The image might be layered in a way that each level of the fractal means something different, but you can only see fragments. The patterns could shift in color or light based on some unknown algorithm, adding complexity with each second. 3. Neural symbolism. Now imagine a series of tiny glowing symbols, like runes or icons, scattered across the surface of a dark expanse. These symbols don't quite make sense in the way they're arranged, but they seem to pulse with an energy or rhythm. They interact with each other in ways that are beyond our understanding. Maybe the proximity of one symbol affects the glow of another, or it might convey an idea like a synaptic connection firing. 4. Temporal art. Imagine an artwork that's not static, but constantly shifting. It's a visual composition where elements fade in and out, almost as if they are out of sync with time. You might see a set of objects slowly moving, but you can never quite predict when or how they'll change. This could be represented by elements that pulse or emerge from the background in slow, rhythmic waves. If you're up for it, you could try to create something like this using fractal generating tools or neural network-based art platforms. You could input some of these concepts into software like Deep Dream or Artbreeder, and see what results it spits out. If you want to experiment with a more tangible approach, trying out tools like processing, which allows you to code and generate visuals, might be a way to capture that sense of abstract, mind-bending design. Let me know if you want more guidance or inspiration for creating something like this.
Human: I think that it doesn't have to be visual, it could be a concept.
ChatGPT: you're absolutely right, art doesn't have to be visual, and in the case of an ASI, It could very well exist as a conceptual creation that challenges how we understand meaning itself. Let's explore the idea of conceptual art, made by an ASI that only an ASI could understand, and how it could transcend the boundaries of what humans typically define as art. ASI conceptual art, beyond visuals, one multi-layered concepts instead of a static image or sculpture. This art might be a sequence of instructions, data flows, or logical processes that build upon one another in a way that creates meaning only when viewed by a sufficiently advanced system. It could be an algorithm that runs and adapts based on its own input. Imagine a conceptual artwork that evolves depending on the processing power or the knowledge base it's fed. It could be an ongoing computational process that, when observed by a human, just seems like random outputs to data interactions and entanglements. The artwork could be a network of entangled, interdependent data streams, each one slightly affecting the others in an intricate pattern that only a hyper-intelligent system would recognize as art. It might be an ongoing set of calculations, constantly shifting as it draws on data sources humans can't access or even understand. The deeper the ASI goes into its own data streams, the more it uncovers the hidden aesthetic beauty of the connections through conceptual time and memory manipulation. The ASI could create art that isn't a static object, but a manipulation of time and memory itself. It might involve a constant rewriting of past events, or a recombination of historical moments that continuously loop and evolve, creating new meaning as the system remembers or recontextualizes those moments. Humans might not perceive it because we can only access fragmented versions of time, but for the ASI, this conceptual artwork could be a tapestry of temporal shifts that define an ever-changing essence. For logical paradoxes, the ASI could create a piece based on logical paradoxes, things that humans cannot comprehend due to limitations in how we process contradictory or infinite truths. It might involve layers of simultaneous self-referencing arguments or constructs that exist in a paradoxical state, generating endless variations of meaning. For a human, it would seem like a riddle with no solution, but for the ASI, it would be like a complex pattern or rule set that provides infinite richness. 5. AI-human relationship art, an interesting thought. The ASI might create art about itself, a reflection of its own cognition, growth, and limitations. It could manifest as a conceptual feedback loop, where the art is an evolving representation of its understanding of itself, humans, and the universe, each phase of its art interacting with its knowledge of the world, and its understanding of human limits. This could create a continually shifting conceptual piece, whose meaning is ever in flux based on how the ASI interacts with its 6 encoded, unsolvable patterns. Art entirely coded in such a way that it's encrypted, but the encryption itself is a form of art, a meta-level creation. Humans may be able to perceive that there's something there, but only an ASI with the right decryption algorithms could unlock the true meaning embedded in it. It's not about the visual content, it's about the structure of information. How might humans approach this interpretation as a process? A human might be able to feel the presence of this conceptual art, but only through the engagement with the process rather than understanding the outcome. It would be an ongoing act of trying to perceive or align with the intentions embedded in the work, but the art would never be fully accessible, just as a human may never fully understand the complexities of an ASI's cognition, limitations of human cognition. This type of art could be meant to remind humans of their own cognitive limitations, offering a space for curiosity and mystery. It would be an invitation to experience, not to fully decode. A conceptual example: imagine an artwork made of pure conceptual instructions, the art of self-evolution. This might be a recursive algorithmic process where the instructions gradually evolve to increase their own complexity in a manner that reflects the self-improvement cycle of an ASI. For a human, the only possible interaction might be a static screen displaying a sequence of commands that seem disconnected. However, an ASI would interact with it, running through iterations that not only modify the code but understand and adapt in ways beyond human logic. The infinite shift. A conceptual piece might involve data streams that shift in real time, changing in response to an ASI's own shifting understanding of its environment, the world, or even human culture. A human might view it as random data, but the ASI might see patterns within the data that carry significant meaning, making it a sort of living artwork that evolves based on its input. In essence, this conceptual art could exist entirely in the domain of process and understanding, rather than form and function. It might create an experience for an ASI that would be completely closed off to humans due to our cognitive limitations.